if you're watching this, I'm going to be using the next couple minutes to tell you about why I think Bernie Sanders' policies are the best progressive plan to move America forward. So if you're curious about what Bernie stands for, this video is a short summary of some of his major policies.
Medicare for all
is single-payer national health insurance. It'll have no networks, premiums, deductibles, copays, or surprise bills. It would include dental, hearing, vision, at-home and community-based long-term care, mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, reproductive and maternity care, prescription drugs, and more. Plus, there's a $200 yearly cap on how much people have to pay out of pocket for medications. And yes, there's a plan on how to pay for it, because as Bernie says,
I wrote the damn bill.
And it's detailed to the letter on his website, and I encourage you to check that out. On war, Bernie has consistently challenged the military-industrial complex for years. He's voted against the Gulf War and the war in Iraq in the past. He believes that the U.S. should cut back on military spending, as the U.S. currently spends more than 10 other nations combined on military costs, opposes a war in Iran, remains critical of Israel for its treatment of Palestine, and supports U.S. troop withdrawals from Afghanistan and Syria. He also believes in giving American veterans the support they deserve, and is committed to fully funding the VA and eliminating the benefits backlog, fill the 50,000 vacancies at VAs that could be in use, and pledges $62 billion to repairing VA infrastructure. On climate change, Bernie is a staunch supporter of the Green New Deal, which acknowledges climate change as a pressing global emergency that needs to be addressed. And he plans to, and I quote, transform our energy system to 100% renewable energy and create 20 million jobs needed to solve the climate crisis. The Green New Deal will ensure justice for frontline communities, especially under-resourced groups, communities of color, Native Americans, people with disabilities, children, and the elderly, as well as holding fossil fuel companies accountable. On immigration, Bernie has repeatedly called for the breakup of ICE and CBP, who have been separating families with increasing frequency under the current administration. He's called for a moratorium on deportations, a complete dismantlement of the deportation centers, and reuniting the families affected, allowing refugees to come to America, and to establish a domestic worker bill of rights, which would provide workers, regardless of immigration status, a $15 minimum wage, collective bargaining rights, and workplace safety. You know, human rights. Education. America is the wealthiest nation in the world, but currently ranks 27th in education and health, down from 6th in 1990. That is really bad. That's why Bernie is running on a College for All platform. It guarantees tuition and debt-free public colleges, canceling the debilitating student loan debt that 45 million Americans are currently saddled with, investing $1.3 billion in private nonprofit, historically black colleges and universities, and ending equity gaps in getting higher education by expanding Pell Grants and work-study programs. Great! LGBTQIA+. Bernie has supported rights for all of these communities for years. Voted against Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the Defense of Marriage Act. Oh, and he also created a trans mecca in Burlington in the 1980s when he was mayor. That's just something that I love especially. On guns, Bernie has a track record that matches his current stance on guns in America. In 1988, he supported an assault rifle ban. In 1993, he voted against the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, and now he's committed to curbing the NRA's influence on Washington, closing down the gun show loophole, banning assault weapons, mandating universal background checks, and implementing a buyback system to get assault weapons off the streets. On workplace democracy, Bernie wants to double union memberships in his first term, establish federal protections against firing workers for anything other than just cause, deny federal contracts to companies that pay poverty wages, and support the $15 minimum wage. On housing and the homelessness crisis, Bernie would invest $2.5 trillion to build nearly 10 million permanently affordable housing units. He'd also implement national rent control and revitalize and repair current public housing and combat gentrification and zoning. On taxing the wealthy, Bernie would establish an annual tax on the extreme wealth of the top 0.1% of U.S. households, which would raise an estimated $4.35 trillion over the next decade and cut the wealth of billionaires in half over the next 15 years, as well as ensuring the wealthy are not able to evade the tax as they can currently. He believes billionaires should not exist. And yes, that's a lot of stuff, but let's run through some quickies for good measure. Bernie on the death penalty, abolish it. Private prisons, eliminate them. Mandatory minimum sentences reform, eliminate them. Cash bail reform, end it. Big banks, bring back Glass-Steagall, a Depression-era act that prevents a single company from engaging in both retail and investment banking. Abortion rights, protect them. Election security, mandate paper ballots. Reparations, prioritize and discuss it. Joe Biden still hasn't endorsed these bills. Charter schools, restrict their growth. DACA, citizenship for dreamers, period. The Wall, no. Legalizing marijuana. Duh, he's from Vermont. Marijuana convictions. Scrap past pot convictions. Wall Street taxes. Create taxes on financial trades. Campaign spending. Unlimited spending should not be allowed in politics. Electoral college. Bye-bye. Felon voting. Allow it. Oil and gas drilling. Ban fracking everywhere. Nutrition. Universal free meals at schools. And rural broadband. Create a public option to give everyone access to Wi-Fi. So, if anything's holding you back, please consider who stands to do the most good, has been the most consistent on their views through their career, and stands the best chance to win. It's Bernie. Hope this helped. Bernie 2020, baby.